Ho, 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 we made this.
Hello and welcome to Right in the Childhood. This is a cheeky little bonus episode for you. I'm Mark, your regular host. Fraser's not here, but he kind of sort of is, in as much as later on when we give you the bonus stuff, he is on that. But I'll tell you about that in a minute. It is basically, it's been a Spider-Man month here on Right in the Childhood. We've done 2 Spider-Man episodes, and it's all based around the fact that Spider-Man Far From Home is coming out very, very soon. But what we've also done is we've also hosted Podcast 616, the MCU podcast on the We Made This Podcast network. We've done 2 episodes of that are now available on the Podcast 616 feed. We covered Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home in anticipation of Spider-Man No Way Home. Unfortunately, Fraser is off being a Christmas elf, so he can't do Spider-Man No Way Home with me. However, I am going to do that, and I'm doing that with my friend from the Red Dwarf podcast, Shipwrecked and Comatose. I'm doing that with Matt Latham, so that should be coming your way very soon as well. So lots and lots of Spider-Man stuff headed your way, or having already headed your way. It's Spider-Man month. It's the most wonderful time of the year. But what we thought we'd do is we thought we would give you even more Spider-Man stuff. This episode is a bonus episode which was a brief discussion on another podcast by Fraser and me about 18 months, maybe 2 years ago. I used to present a podcast about comic books, and I had Fraser on as a guest to talk about the entire Sam Raimi trilogy, and we managed to cover it in 45 minutes. It is a very, very brief and very kind of concise chat, but I think it's a lot of fun and it is worth just chucking it your way because we're all feeling so very festive. We're all feeling like it's Spidey time. So please do enjoy this extra little bonus content, a little chat of Fraser and me, where we talked about all 3 Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. I'm Mark.
And I'm Zach.
Every week, on a Saturday, in the Fab Radio International Studios,
We discuss 3 of the week's comic book releases and decide if we want to
pull or pass. Welcome to Pull or Pass, your weekly geeky comic book show right here on the We Made This Podcast Network and Fab Radio International. This is issue 41. My name is Mark and I am your regular host. What we've been doing over the last few weeks, while Zach is taking a few weeks off, is we've been doing Pull or Pass Film Club, where I invite a different guest each time to come and talk to me about a comic book adapted film. Although in this case, when I invited Fraser, he suggested that we do all of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. So instead of having to rewatch 1 film, I've had to rewatch 3 films this week. It's a good job that at least 2/3 of them are good, eh? And it is our Pull or Pass Film Club month, where I have a different guest each week to talk about a different film. Except today's guest wants to talk about 3. Hello, Fraser.
Hello. Yeah, I just felt like going the extra mile.
Well, for the other ones, I've had to watch 1 film. For you, I've had to watch 3. It's a good job that they were the Spider-Man trilogy.
Yeah,
by Sam Raimi.
it was a good 3 to pick though. At least I wasn't saying, "Oh, let's watch the entire MCU or DCEU." Or
So we've got to basically maybe talk about 10 minutes per film. Why did you want to talk about all 3 rather than just picking 1?
because that's like a parent trying to pick their children. I imagine. For goodness sake. They all complement each other so well. Even Spider-Man 3 had to go out as far to say, but we'll wait until we talk deeply about that. I also think it's nice to talk about the trilogy as a whole,
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think there's a lot of important stuff that comes from these three films that I don't feel like we could have had the modern MCU without this as almost like testing the waters. They would have watched this and gone, look at what you can achieve with a series of films, you know?
Yeah, well, like the last one came out in 2007, and then a year later you've got, Incredible Hulk and Iron Man, which did start,
Yeah.
the MCU, and even going back to, like, Spider-Man, the first one from 2002, that sort of, like, seemed to open the gate for superhero movies. Yeah, there was some before. There's, like, the Blade trilogy that everyone, like, always says, oh, don't forget about that. And it's like, yeah, but
Spawn.
how much of an impact did they really have? Like,
Well, I mean,
when you think about it, especially because, like, superhero films sort of had this stink of Batman and Robin to get past.
we're doing Batman and Robin at another point on Pull Past Film Club.
I do, you know what, I do love that film for what it is and what, like, it's supposed to just be cheesy Batman, but I'm sure you're going to talk more about that when you talk about.
Well, so far we've done Spawn and The Crow, and
so it's kind of
they're kind of like before these films. But we've also talked about Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which is subsequent to these films.
That's a really
so it's been a nice mix this month of Pull Past Film Club.
Yeah, definitely, and I think like. The 2002 you had the Spider, and then you had X-Men as well. Like I feel like them two, like iconic sort of ones by two different studios as well. Like really did kick it off, and then Disney came in with their money and was like, "Oh, we see what you're doing here," and it's rather nice.
But that's the thing; they've clearly invested. You can tell from the first one that they've clearly invested in this. They see a franchise that they can make a lot of money from, and they made it look good. There's no kind of cheapness in the first one that I hadn't seen it for a while, and I thought it might be cheap, but it really wasn't.
No, it wasn't. No, it's still like I feel most of the elements still hold up, and obviously like it's weird rewatching it because as a child, this is when I was a child when these films came out, and I was very nostalgic about it. But on your half, you were not a child.
Well, I did look at this, and you were 6. When this came out, and I was 24.
Yeah, so like, oh wow. So like, my thinking is, if I'm trying to go back in time now, this is really hurt my brain. Was there a buzz for these films when they were coming out? Because obviously, the internet was around then, right?
So rude. You are so rude. Yes, the internet was around.
The internet was around, but like. The buzz that like superhero movies or just movies in general get now. Did Spider-Man have that? Because I imagined it would have. Like I only know from like learning the history that like it was supposed to be coming around all this time. Leonardo DiCaprio and it was supposed to do it. So many of these Frankie Muniz, which would have been incredible. I would have loved that even more as a kid. I was a big Malcolm in the Middle fan, and then now knowing that it could have been him playing, I'm a bit like, oh man.
He's a bit old now, isn't he? Bizarrely, because in my head, Frankie Muniz is always like 15.
Yeah,
but he's probably about 30, 35.
Maybe I imagine he's one of them that just hasn't aged.
What, like you?
Yeah, like do you know what I mean? Like I can't imagine like it's just hit him hard. Was there a buzz? Was there like my goodness, like set photos and all that jazz?
They'd clearly invested in it, and you got to remember they used that bloody awful but incredibly popular band Nickelback for the theme tune.
Is this what I need to hear?
Yeah, exactly. But they were at the absolute peak of their fame when they were put on the soundtrack to Spider-Man. So they'd never really done that with a superhero film before. They hadn't got like the massive artists to come and do something with them. We talked about the soundtrack of Spawn on the last episode, where they got kind of heavy metal bands and dance bands, but not the biggest band.
The biggest band now.
So I think it was a big deal, and I think it was actually quite a big risk at the time, to be honest with you.
Because I remember, like, amazingly, this is for anyone out there who's, like, going into college or university or anything, pick a subject that allows you to watch Spider-Man a ridiculous amount of times because I've managed to do this 3 times now. So in college, when I was doing film studies, I did a massive project on the rise of Marvel. This was back around, I think, when Age of Ultron was coming out, and I got to look a lot into like what made this Spider-Man film successful. And it's all the promotional stuff. I obviously can't. Like, I wasn't there really to sort of take it all in. I wasn't taking much in.
You were 6, mate.
But like they had the Twin Towers stuff, like and all that, and then that got taken away, and just seeing it as like it was sort of like a history project, and it just made me appreciate that stuff that I adored as a child even more. And then I obviously did it at university, and which is a foreshadowing for Spider-Man 2, which I'll just throw there now before I forget. And for Spider-Man 1, I did it for journalism as well, for my journalism degree. So
Brilliant.
Spider-Man's helped me in all sort of elements. One thing before we do move to the first film is it popped into my head about the set. Was really cool. It was very obvious that Sam Raimi cared about Spider-Man and sort of loved Spider-Man, because there's pictures of him on set with Tobey Maguire and they're reading Ultimate Spider-Man, and I think that's just like it's a nice touch, because I feel a lot of the times with adaptations, comic book and otherwise, like other books, sometimes it's like some directors don't really care about the source material, or just like, just give me the stuff I need to know.
Yeah, I mean, he was clearly a fan, and I mean, I liked Sam Raimi at this point already because the Evil Dead films were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And when I saw that this guy that was kind of a culty...
Yeah, they kind of caught him on the right point of his rise.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. This culty director being given this opportunity.
Yeah, very close with your words.
I did. Cult. But did you notice that in all 3 films he cast Bruce Campbell?
Right, this was the thing I want to talk about as well, because it's so cool, because there's a hint that apparently this was supposed to be touched on in Spider-Man 4, that he was going to be Mysterio. And it just makes it so much cooler. Rewatching them back now with that in my brain, I'm like, oh my goodness, because in the first one, I think he's the ring announcer for the wrestling show, or he's setting it up. The second one, is he awake? No, he's dormant.
Dormant, and he's a bit of a git. And and then in the third one, he's a French waiter. Yeah.
So I was like, because as a kid, obviously, you sort of like recognise stuff, but obviously I just thought, I guess I just didn't think much about it. But then obviously, you know, with the internet and research and all that, I was like, man, they were going to do a mistake, what? And all this crazy stuff, because there was a rumour ages ago that Sony were just going to do a Spider-Man 4 with Sam Raimi. They were just like, and then like the sort of script and all that came out, and I was like, I thought I recognised that guy, and then rewatching it, I was like, Bruce Campbell, and I was like, that would have been such a cool Mysterio arc to do.
I think it's pretty obvious that both you and me really like the first film.
I think they're all awful.
we can't really gush about it enough. So I have put down some points that I would like to discuss that are potentially negatives. And I know you don't like it when I get negative. But the 18 years on, the Bonesaw joke is a little bit problematic.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, did you? The hero shouldn't be a bit homophobic.
The thing is with this,
it's mild.
Again, it's like a product. It's very much. I saw this as very much a product of its time, and it also reminded me of like, what an actual non-progressive 15-year-old would say, because it took me back to when I was 15, and I was like, I went to an all-boys school, so of course it's going to be incredibly homophobic. But most of the jokes were, if not incredibly, slightly homophobic, and so I was like,
it hasn't aged well.
With that, I was like, oh, but then the fact that Bonesaw would find that offensive also just shows that he's like, you know, But then there's other ways. Like if they were to do it now,
that wouldn't fly.
Yeah, it wouldn't fly.
You can't have the hero being homophobic.
What else doesn't fly? Just so I'm on this point, is Tobey Maguire as a 15 to 18-year-old. Him running from the school bus looks so creepy in retrospect, and it's so funny because.
I looked this up. He was 27 playing a 16-year-old boy, and it showed.
Because when I watched this when I was younger, 18-year-olds did look like Tobey Maguire to me. Looking at it now, 18-year-olds do not look older than me.
No.
Like,
No.
It was...
No, I think it's hugely problematic when it comes to American depiction of young people.
I think they're much better at it now. Like, obviously, like with Homecoming, and that's what makes, like, the Homecoming and Far From Home stuff just makes it stick out even more, like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
Like the Andrew Garfield stuff, it was like, yeah, he looked older, but it was like, oh, he still looks younger than Tobey Maguire. But now it's just, I don't know. And then when he gets when he gets on the bus, at least they didn't do what they did in Fantastic, where like they're clearly not teenagers, but they are surrounded by people who are obviously teenagers. Like no one looks like a teenager in this, which makes it sort of okay. Apart from when you see a teacher and you think the teacher wants to say me.
Yeah. I agree, and it is improving with Hollywood cinema, but particularly for the 80s, 90s, and thousands. I complain about this on other podcasts all the time. Super Tech Film Club, look it up, it's dead good. And it's a massive problem for me. My suspension of disbelief is completely ruined by 30-year-old teenagers.
It's so funny. And it's so prominent in this first one, because in the other two, obviously, it's sort of like, you know, he's supposed to be older, but in this one, it's just the school stuff. It's like, oh my goodness, how far back were these guys held? Was this like... It makes you think about the blip. It's like, did they just take an extra 5 years?
Yeah, maybe that.
They waited. They waited. It's like, oh, we could carry on with school, or, you know, we could come back. Maybe it's like the coronavirus. They were on the coronavirus for that long that they came back as.
Could see.
Maybe it could be foreshadowing it.
Alternative realities.
People
Maybe we're wrong about this.
People are going to go back to high school in, 10 years' time after the coronavirus is finally gone, after it's had its 5th or 6th wave.
Don't.
People are going to go back, and we're going to have 30-year-olds who are like, oh no, I'm still in year 11.
I've forgotten what the Fab Radio International Studio looks like. I've been recording at home so much.
Maybe it's this now.
Maybe it is. It isn't
a TARDIS, and the TARDIS is always bigger on the inside than the outside. And
so, look, back to the. We've got so little time because you wanted to talk about all three. I feel that they really invested. The cast, the acting, the plot, and the effects were all great. It also, again, suffers as a product of its time. I feel like the depiction of schizophrenia is a little unpleasant, but not too unpleasant. I think Defoe is amazing in the part.
Is this with Green Goblin?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is with, like, it's a perfect depiction of, like, what the Green Goblin character is. Like, they've taken this from the cartoons, which I really did enjoy, is, like, seeing the Goblin as a separate person. And I think, do they say it's schizophrenia at any point?
No, they don't.
Because I was going to say, because, like, schizophrenia is that's a wide thing altogether. Like, I've been learning more about it thanks to a random Netflix documentary. But it's not just, split personalities. It is like...
Well, that's what I'm getting at. It's not as simplistic as this.
Yeah, but I think this isn't supposed to be on schizophrenia. It's supposed to be sort of... I've said it 3 different times now. I'm just going to say schiz because it's much easier for me to say. the phrenia, and people might complain. It's like, oh, this boy dyslexic. But like the split personality, I do sort of enjoy. I think again, it's one of those things where it's like it's been over saturated now, and in films, and when it has been oversaturated, it's been people have used it as schizophrenia, whereas this is very much like the duality of the two characters, like in a battle between Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin, which is really cool.
True.
He is the suit. Looking back, is a bit okay. Like it's
how so?
I don't know. I think just looking back at it compared to like what we have now, it just seems a bit. I don't know. Dated, a bit hokey, but that's hard to do. It's hard not to do with the Green Goblin. Like if you go full hokey, like if you had the pup leather and all that stuff. And then if you go the ultimate comics route and have him as a massive Green Goblin, you sort of ruin it all together.
Yeah. The ultimate comics one, no, thank you.
But that was really. I thought it was really cool, and he's got such a goblin-like face as it is. Like, it was perfect casting.
Yeah, it was.
His facial.
Yeah, the casting was great.
there was an interesting thing I learned recently about looking into this was so Oscorp, the company that they're battling with.
Yeah.
It's called Quest something or another, and they're another military thing. Found out that company isn't actually like a military-based company. It's a toy company that Disney bought in like the 80s and 90s. And I was like, that's really cool. That's like really interesting to know. So go on, what more pet peeves have you got?
Right, just I've got one more thing before we move on to Spider-Man 2, and that is the classic Spidey dilemma of the car of people versus Gwen Stacy.
Mary Jane.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Why did they make it Mary Jane rather than Gwen Stacy?
Well, the interesting thing, this is, again, it's coming back to Ultimate Comics. So in Ultimate Comics, for those of you that don't know, this was like brought around in the 2000s, so it was around the same time as the Sam Raimi films.
And that was the full reset of the Marvel Universe, wasn't it?
So it started with Ultimate Spider-Man, so it was, a retelling, reimagining, modernising it. And they chose to have, they basically swapped the characters of Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane around, so like, Mary Jane was his friend in high school, book smart and all that.
Right.
And then when Gwen Stacy came in, she was like, the punk rocker who's like inspired by Madonna, which you can sort of see. But she was like that. And Green Goblin in the Ultimate Comics drops Mary Jane off the Washington Bridge. She is saved. But you also it's done in the 90s comics, in the 90s cartoon as well. Like Mary Jane is dropped there and she disappears. Frustratingly enough, never to be seen again. She's seen, and you think it's Mary Jane, but it's actually a clone, and they never have any closure on whether Mary Jane comes back or not, and it actually broke my heart. That from rewatching it in Disney Plus. Quarantine. So much Spider-Man.
So basically, what at the time, the perception was that it was rushed, because they felt like the characters had been amalgamated. We learn a little bit later on in Spider-Man 3 that they didn't amalgamate the characters. But at the time, because Gwen Stacy wasn't in Spider-Man,
did people just think that
they'd amalgamated both of his girlfriends? Yeah.
Oh, that's mad. No, yeah. So it's again like I think it's because they were running concurrently, which is so cool. The comics and the Ultimate Comics in these films, they even have. This is a very funny thing. So there's a storyline in Ultimate Comics where Spider-Man goes to Hollywood and Peter Parker infiltrates Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire filming the Spider-Man film. It's pretty funny. There's only a few issues, but he just gives Tobey Maguire like a what for, and it's like I enjoy it. It's not for you, maybe. By the way, just do a cheap plug. If you really enjoy me talking about Ultimate Spider-Man, I've written a whole article about it on What Culture and why it's probably the best running Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, we didn't actually introduce who you are. He writes for What Culture?
Yeah.
On comics?
And you used to be on this show.
Yeah, you were on Geek of the Week, which was the predecessor to this show. And we're going to be podcasting together again soon.
Yeah, of course. It's all coming. It's all coming to fruition. I'm Fraser. I like Spider-Man. This is why we're talking about these three films.
Spider-Man. Let's move on to Spider-Man 2. We've already talked too much.
I honestly think this rewatching this has caused a lot of conflict within myself, because I used to say that this was A, my favourite superhero movie, B, my favourite Spider-Man movie, and C, my favourite sequel. Whereas now, I am conflicted, because I'd watched Into Spider-Verse, went, Spider-Man 2, that's a close contender now. And then I watched Homecoming, I was like, Spider-Man 2, that's a close sequel. And now rewatching it, I'm sort of, I don't know, because there's some elements that are still great.
So many good films.
There's so many elements that are still great, like the train scene alone is incredible. Yes. And that, going back to my film class, I did that. I studied that scene, I think, twice. I think one for college and one for uni, and it's just incredible. Like the character, every character gets their moment. Like Aunt May gets her moment. Like she's not this defenseless thing. She's battering him with a handbag. Oz, brilliant. It's Doc Ock as well. Like, we've seen the full capabilities of his limbs, which is so cool. And then obviously, like, there's the whole, he's on the train, he's holding the things down, and they do like a little nod to it and Into the Spider-Verse because it's such an iconic moment.
It really is.
And then he does the Jesus Christ, like they raise him up, and it's sort of like that's symbolism. I know you're not a religious person.
It was a little bit.
I had a feeling that you don't like it. You might not like it as a non-religious person.
This film, right, is clearly confident of what it is. The first one was a success, and the credits show that. And yes, it is. It's flexing. And it's very confident with its opening credits. It shows that it has huge, huge potential and that it's clearly a franchise. They've invested. The casting is still brilliant. They've brought back everybody as the cast. It's a real franchise. It's confident in that. But what I do feel,
I think, just before you go to your negatives, I think that's what makes it like most people's favourites of this series and of Spider-Man, because they're clearly building on it. They know what they're doing. Every stage is being built on. I want to bring back, like, because I know you like your negatives, the credits thing. This was very much like, it used to be such a big thing, didn't it? Opening credits.
Yeah,
like,
it did.
In the first one, I was like, it got me hyped because I was like, oh yeah, Spider-Man, like the theme music is cool. But then it was also like, oh, it's kind of a weird one. But the credits in the second one are brilliant because it is such a good way to recap. Yeah, you almost in a way don't need to watch the first one, and it's great. Sorry, you can go to your negatives.
I'm not going to the negatives yet. I also wanted to mention that even though this has only been 2 years, there's a marked improvement on the CG as well, noticeably so, which again shows investment in the franchise. Plus
that dollar,
plus the fact that in just the space of 2 years, this was a boom period for CGI and getting better and better and better. So it is very indicative of the times when it was being filmed as well.
Superheroes one, it was like Harry Potter's were coming out during this time. So it was, again, sort of the franchises were being built, and sort of that idea of the characters growing as well as the production was very cool.
And again, someone like Alfred Molina being cast as Dr. Octopus. He's not only a great Dr. Octopus, but he's a very, very well-regarded character actor. And he's playing Dr. Bloody Octopus. 5 years prior to that, you wouldn't have expected anyone of that caliber to go anywhere near a superhero film. So these three films show you just the kind of the beginnings of establishing that superhero films are where well-respected actors want to be.
Yeah, no, if you look now at the sort of people they get, it's madness, isn't it, to think back.
So, Sam Raimi did The Evil Dead, and then he did The Evil Dead 2, and they were basically the same film.
Yeah.
Sam Raimi did Spider-Man, and then did Spider-Man 2. And they were kind of close to being the same film. It was a guy who went mad because of the power that he had with experiments, and Spider-Man stopped him.
I think with the sort of overall plot, I get what you think. I get you thinking there, because they're basically the same thing. But I think where the difference comes is the characters. I think this one benefits from is obviously Peter's returning, so he's getting a developed story. But we are doing the same thing with the villain. You get the thing there.
That's what I'm getting at, basically.
Obviously, like Amazing Spider-Man 2 did this, and there started to be a trend where you thought every sequel was going to do it. But I love the Spider-Man No More storyline, and like obviously when he's putting the costume away. And I liked that side of this second one, where it's like, okay, in the first one he's learning to do his powers, in the second one he's losing his powers, so it's him dealing with that. Yeah. So I think with his story it progressed, but with the villain it's sort of like a whole. But I will say his relationship with Peter is different, which I kind of like. He sees him as a mentor, which makes it more emotional. Whereas the emotion in the first one was like, "You're my mate's dad."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Please help." I do love this scene as well. He's like, "Please help me," and then he sets a glider on him, and he flips, and it's the whole. Oh no!
That was.
I can't remember the actual thing. So he goes, "Oh," and
it stabs him. Well. And I think you're right. They're not the same. Maybe I should have rephrased it as similar. And you're also right about the ongoing plot that continues the storyline across the two films. But, if that's the only thing I can find as a major
Yeah.
problem with the film, we're doing all right.
Yeah.
Essentially, superhero stories can be pretty damn samey, actually. In general, not just across these two films.
No, they always say it, don't they, with the Marvel origin story, that they're all the same, so whatever you want to enjoy what you enjoy.
I do feel like the ending of this film, they could have ended the franchise really nicely there.
Oh, really? I think you should have ended it with the second.
I think it came to a good closure, yeah. I really do feel like it came to a really good closure. And I don't understand why it came to such an almost perfect closure when they were absolutely certain they were going to do more of these things, because it was becoming a cash cow.
Do you think, though, that... I don't know, because this is really hard, like, sequelitis. It's like, when you make a film, do you want, like... I feel like you want to make a film that can be seen on its own. Like we say with the intro, this whole film can be seen on its own because it's, you know, it's ending, but knowing there's more is okay. Whereas sometimes if you watch some films now, like if you watch say you're watching a trilogy and you watch the second film, it's very much not isolated. And like if you watch the sequel, like, oh, I've got to watch the first one. And then by the end you're left going, but what about the third? Where it's like, that's very much a TV thing where I feel like
true.
Like I'm all for films like this, like a second one in a franchise, being a film on its own, and then maybe you can do something on the third, like a Terminator 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, I had so many threes. There's so many Terminator threes, but like something like that, where it's like you're not set in stone. Because I think obviously the MCU has done it to a great success, but there are films that have, other franchises that have, shot themselves in the wherever they want to shoot themselves. By having to set this up.
I just want to again highlight the acting. Jonah is brilliant.
He's good.
Dr. Octopus is brilliant.
A lot of them
Everyone
improved
in this
as well.
Brilliant.
I think a lot of the characters improved. Harry Osborn in this, like, we didn't get to see too much of him in the first one, but in the second one, like, the dynamic with him and the return in Norman Osborn was epic. And again, he was as creepy as he needed to, which was which was on point.
Have you got anything else about Spider-Man 2? Because we are running out of time and we need to talk about Spider-Man 3.
That Tobey Maguire nearly didn't come back. It was nearly going to be what's his name? He just played Mysterio. Jake Gyllenhaal. Yeah, he was complaining. Apparently, he had a complaint about his back, that he injured his back and he wanted more money. And there's a little thing in the news. I always thought this was a joke. There's a thing in the Daily Bugle that says something, can back injury lead to brain trauma or something like that, or brain damage.
Wow.
Yeah. Apparently, Tobey Maguire, not well liked in these films.
Well, he's good though.
Yeah. Everyone hates Spider-Man in these 3 films, and we're going to start to see why in Spider-Man 3.
Well, I mean, he can be really, really mean and really, really selfish. But then again, he was in the comics.
Yeah, but apparently that's because a lot of people didn't like Tobey Maguire as well, so that kind of makes sense.
Okay.
Oh, I'll shout out, before we move on to 3, I'm really apologetic about this. Can we shout out that amazing scene in the first one? On the one with the tray?
Right, yeah. When he catches the stuff.
Yeah. Over 150 takes had to do for that. That was no CGI, no BS, all glue on the stuff. And he catched it all.
He actually did that?
Yeah, how impressive is that?
Good grief.
I'd be remiss if we missed that out, because
I did not know that. I assumed it was CG.
From that great thing to Spider-Man 3.
Okay, Spider-Man.
I'll let you get your initial thoughts out first.
I feel like this suffered the same way that Batman vs Superman did. There were two potentially good films smushed into one, and it made it really rushed and really, really terrible. Rushed. Sandman, Green Goblin, and Venom could all quite easily have their own. And it
could have been having 5 Spider-Man, 5 Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
I do feel like it should have been. Or at least maybe Sandman and Green Goblin. No Venom.
Yeah, them too. Apparently it was Sony forced Venom in. But Venom was very popular this time, wasn't he?
He was.
I remember loving him as a kid. Well, not loving him, being terrified as him, but also being like, he's pretty cool.
That's the thing. Venom was cool, and Venom was red hot in the comics. So you can see why they wanted to put him in. so live Sandman.
Yeah.
You know, that we didn't
do
need
that.
all three of them.
What did you think of this version of Sandman? Because I remember as a kid really liking it and rewatching it again. Again, I liked the new take on him. I thought it was.
That's the thing.
But I wanted that. I know what you mean because I want that film. I don't want anything else. Like,
Yeah, that's the thing. There was some really great stuff, some really great ideas, some really great actors, and it was just so rushed.
yeah,
And it doesn't lay the grim on quite as thick as the second one. But I feel like that's because it hasn't got time.
no. It's weird though because it's got time for a weird dance.
What's
Anyway.
yeah, it does.
We'll go back to that later. Carry on.
So,
You think?
what's really frustrating is the wonderful slow burn of Kurt Connors over 3 films. He's already lost his arm, so we
Yeah.
know that he will potentially become the Lizard. That was done so beautifully. And if there'd been a 4th one, you could have seen the
it.
progression.
Yeah.
But the rush with Venom was disgraceful.
Oh, it's terrible, wasn't it? It really was. Like, as I feel, the Green Goblin, like Harry Osborn as a Green Goblin, that again had been leading for 3 films.
Yeah.
And he could have been it on his own. Or as you say, you know, like I didn't mind him and Sandman, like them two as a story together. The Sandman story, they clearly invested a lot of time in, like they did with Doc Ock, like they did with Green Goblin. But yeah, then Venom, it was a bit like, you know, when you get a draft together and you just got to throw something in, it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like
Poor Topher Grayson as well.
there's like
Doesn't
weird,
deserve the heat.
there's like weird stuff as well. By this point, it's 2007. Everybody had a mobile in 2007. There are no mobiles in this film, and there are plot points that could have been solved by a mobile, and that frustrated me. And this, more than the other two, very much relies on coincidence, like real kind of glaring coincidence, and that's not a good story. That's not a good plot. That's relying too much on coincidence is just lazy and rushed. Again, going back to the rushed thing, I don't understand why they rushed it. They got this franchise. They could have had 10 films out of this.
Oh, easily. This could have been a whole MCU on its own.
It could. It really, really could.
Could you imagine? We could be living in such a good world.
We could, and it's just such a damn shame that there was so much to actually like about this film. I went into the third one expecting it to be unforgivably bad, because that's my memory of it, because it essentially did ruin the franchise. Yeah. But it's not. There's a lot to like. There's a lot of good stuff in it.
I've had such a great journey. Because as a kid, I loved this, because it was more Spider-Man, there was a lot going on, Venom was there. I was emotionally connected to Sandman and Green Goblin and Peter's relationship. So, especially when his butler's like, oh, by the way, it was your dad that killed himself, not Spider-Man. You're like, dude, you've been sitting on that for how long?
It's a bit, yeah.
So as a kid, I loved it, but then when I went to uni, everyone, was like, oh, Spider-Man 3 was terrible. So I was like, maybe it is. And there's a great Goldberg's episode. I love my random tangents, but in that, Adam Goldberg's, he finally watches one of the films that he realises is terrible, as a kid. And it's a sign of him growing up. He goes, all the things I love are terrible. And I had this is Spider-Man 3. I was like, no, it's terrible. It's just, maybe Green Lantern's terrible as well. It's not. I still hold by. I like Green Lantern. But at the end of my university journey, and rewatching it again this time, I grew to like Spider-Man 3 for what it is, a hot mess. But, I enjoy it.
I wouldn't go as far as saying that I've forgiven Spider-Man 3, but I feel like watching it now.
Definitely could be better.
Yeah.
But I enjoy it.
Watching it now, I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't quite as ropey as I was expecting it to be. The CG was still on point.
Especially from some of the bad stuff we have now.
Yes, the CG was great. The actors did as best as they could with a very, very, very rushed script. And there's more to like in it than I remembered.
And I know how you're saying oh, the whole story is built on coincidence. At least there is a story, Suicide Squad. But
I felt like Venom really shouldn't have been there. That film would have actually been great if they'd have done Sandman and Green Goblin, and then the next one was Venom.
Venom,
The next one was... Or the next one was the Lizard.
You hint at Venom.
Yeah.
You can hint
Introduce
at Venom.
Brock.
Yeah, introducing Eddie at the paper, because they were great at doing that. Because like you say, Kurt Connors, I didn't realise how much he was in this trilogy. Like, he's in every film, and you're like, oh, is there a little something?
I think the fourth one would have been great with Kurt Connors as the bad guy.
Yeah.
With the Lizard. I think it would have
as well. Like, it was really, really cool. The dance. What are we talking about?
Go on then, talk about the dance.
I feel like it's the most memorable part of this this film. It's the one point everyone goes to sort of say, "Oh, look how terrible it is." But I've come for a journey on this, and I want to shout out Matt Jasper. I don't know if he's going to listen to this, but he's helped me appreciate Goat, because he was like, "I don't care what people think. I like this film," and I was like, "Oh," and like him doing that, and then you go, oh, "Okay, I respect that." And then I watched it and I went, "Oh, me too." The dance. Obviously, he looks lame, but the thing is, he's not supposed to be cool. It's supposed to be Peter Parker's version of what he thinks is cool. So the fact that he thinks, oh yeah, all this like dancing is cool, just shows how lame he actually is. And it goes back to your thing of, yeah, he's a dick in it, but he's been a bit of a dick throughout this thing, and he's been like that in the comics.
I can see your point. I can, but it's it's just not
what you want to
watch.
See.
No, it's not. And I feel like he gets away with essentially what might be considered abusive behaviour in modern times, you know? And he's the hero.
I don't think he gets away with it.
He gets the girl back.
Yeah, he gets the girl back, but at the time it's like...
Yeah. I don't know. But that scene is unpleasant to watch, regardless of what it was trying to portray. One last point before we go. Across these films, obviously, Spider-Man in the comics, he created his own web fluid and had like wrist-mounted mechanics. He actually has that as part of his body in this. So every time he's swinging, it's mucus or snot or spit.
Yeah, it's a nice little touch. Again, I think from memory that's from the Ultimate line as well. Like,
is it from the Ultimate?
Yeah, literally like it drips. Oh no, it's not.
It feels like that's what it should have been in the comics. But people didn't like it because that's what wasn't in the comics. It wasn't. So this is my memory. It wasn't. I don't think it happened in the Ultimate Spider-Man, but one of the many Spider-Man lines at the time. It might have been amazing. In fact, they retconned it so it was that as well. Yeah,
so they
copied
the films. But I do sort of like that because it's another Spider ability.
Yeah,
and I remember as a kid, like, because when you think about it, when they say, "Oh, it does everything a spider can," oh. Really?
No.
Like, climb walls, I mean, there are other creatures that can do that as well. So, like, him having the webbing was...
I think I like it with hindsight, because it makes more sense for the genetically modified thing. But at the time, I really resisted it because it wasn't what was in the comics.
It gets rid of, as well, this is used so much in the 90s cartoon thing of, oh, no, I've run out of web fluid. It's like, you're always running out. Carry more!
Yeah.
Whereas this, it's like, oh no, I sweated it all.
Yeah.
It
makes more sense.
Imagine him with a cold.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or if it was a warm New York day.
What a lovely way to end it. I wish I'd come up with that bit at the beginning rather than
the end.
Rather than Spider-Man mucus. Fraser, it's been a pleasure, and we managed to talk about all three films in 40 minutes.
Told you we could do it. Told you.
Thanks for listening to Pull or Pass. To listen again, it's www.mixcloud.com/pull-or-pass.
Or you can listen to the podcast version on Spotify, Anchor, YouTube, and all other good podcast sites.
Join our Facebook group, search for Pull or Pass Radio Show.
Follow us on Twitter at Pull or Pass.
Hello everyone, this is Tony, Network Chief of We Made This. As you know, our podcast network brings together a brilliant assortment of talent who talk about all kinds of pop culture content, such as the episode you've just listened to. We're not going anywhere, but we'd love to keep the lights on for even longer if you're able to support our network on Patreon. For just £2 a month, you get your name in lights and the satisfaction of knowing you're helping us produce more great audio. And for £3 a month, you'll get your name in lights, but you'll also get access to an exclusive bi-monthly podcast from the We Made This talent pool on podcasting, pop culture, and, well, you tell us. We'll take your suggestions. For less than the price of a coffee per month, you can help keep We Made This going. Just head to patreon.com/We Made This. That's patreon.com/We Made This. And get the ball rolling.
Right in the Childhood is a podcast brought to you by the We Made This podcast network. You can follow the show on Twitter at RITCpod. The show's creators and hosts are Mark Adams and Fraser Summers. Follow us on Twitter at MarkAdamsHC and at SpiderPanTweets. The show's logo was created by Carl Bryan and the theme tune composed and performed by Colin Jackson Brown. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed being hit.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
Rarely Going, an animated Star Trek podcast. I wonder if we're far enough into this to really figure this out yet. But it feels like with animation you almost have a little bit more of a license to reflect and look back than maybe they feel they can do. Although, Picard is obviously very nostalgic, but
stylistically it's very different though. It's not your father's Picard, even though it is the same actor.
The TARDIS crew.
Donald Sumpter is amazing. I love the fact that he just pops up. He just pops up. Probably Rassilon. Probably.
Well, they do confirm later on he is.
I think they do.
Yeah,
don't
he
they?
says on Rassilon the Redeemer.
Of course he does. Bloody hell!
And he has the gauntlet as well, which gives the hint at that.
Yeah.
I'm nodding profusely.
Yeah, we're very proper classic Doctor Who as well. A lot of it as well. Yes.
Chucky Vision.
Well, everyone wanted it, but I still wasn't sure truly whether or not Devon was gay, or, well, he might also be bi, but interested in Jake in a romantic way at least. And my heart, it was physical, Dev. I was like, oh, and then I cried. Did I mention I cried? I'm not even remotely embarrassed about the fact that I cried twice.
It was very special.
You didn't cry, did you?
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.